On this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out, we're going to talk about the Canadiens and their 7-1 loss to the New Jersey Devils. At least it wasn't 8-2. I'm Julian McKenzie, alongside the usual suspects. Again, Stu Cowan from the Montreal Gazette. Rick Green is in the house. Jessica Rusnak from CBC Daybreak is also here. And I mentioned it off top, the Canadiens losers again. A 7-1 loss at the hands of the New Jersey Devils. Mind you, I think they played the night before. They were on a massive losing streak on the road. And they still not only found a way to win, they beat the Canadiens pretty handily. I would like to start with you, Stu. Your takeaways from that embarrassing loss for the Canadiens against the New Jersey Devils.
Embarrassing. Josh Anderson nailed it after the game. That's exactly what it was. The entire organization should be embarrassed, right from Jeff Molson right down to the players on the bench. There was no effort. The players look like they've given up, look like they've stopped playing for the coach, and there's still 30-odd games left to go, and you wonder, like, how much longer are Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes willing to allow this to continue to happen? I mean, losing is one thing, and losses help the Canadiens more than wins as far as possibly getting the number 1 pick at the draft. But losing is one thing. Being embarrassed, I mean, they were lucky there was only 500 fans there last night, because if there was 20,000, they would have been booed off the ice for sure. I'm sure a lot of season ticket holders are happy they don't have to pay to watch this. Getting refunds for their tickets for these games. And, once they go back to full capacity, you wonder how many season ticket holders are like, oh, no, I don't want to have to pay to watch this. It's embarrassing. They look like a team that's just given up, a team that doesn't care. Dominic Ducharme has run out of answers. It's the same answers to all the questions. Ben Sherratt was asked after the game against the Devils why they look so confused in their own end all the time, and he didn't have an answer. And we're 40-odd games into the season. So it's just a mess. It's embarrassing. And it might just get worse going forward, because it certainly looks like they're not going to make a coaching change. I think if they were, it would have been done during the bye week. And they're just going to embrace the tank here and go forward and try and lose as many games as they can. At least that's what it looks like.
Yeah, and to me, it looks like they should have stayed on the beach, because, they got it in major big-time cruise mode. A lot of guys just not really interested in playing. They're just looks like they're holding on, waiting for the guys upstairs to pull the trigger on some type of shakeup or some kind of trade. But it's sad to see that you even have a guy like Brendan Gallagher, who's the heart and soul. He looks like he's just totally lost his drive. He looks like he's lost his best friend and doesn't want to play anymore. When you see something like this happen with a guy like that usually shows up each and every night, it's a bad situation. And you look at Petrie again. We've talked about him before. He continues to do some things that are hurting the hockey club. So they've got some big time problems with their personnel, and I don't know how long it's going to drag out. But right now, it just looks like everybody is waiting for that last game so they can go back to the beach.
And that's the problem, is they're not just losing, they're getting embarrassed. And they're getting embarrassed by teams like the New Jersey Devils, who are in no position to be embarrassing other teams in the NHL. And as we mentioned, they just came off a break. The Canadiens were rested. They had that mental break to spend time with their family, leave Montreal, get some sun, be on the beach. And there was nothing there. And something that Josh Anderson mentioned after the game, which is a good point, there's no spark. One line will have a good game, and that doesn't trickle down throughout the entire team. It's like they're all playing their own individual games. Like, okay, we got one line going. That's good for them. I'm out of this. We're already down by so many goals at this point. Let's just count the minutes until this game is over and then focus on the next one. And they keep saying, this has to stop here. We have to come back next game. But they never do. They're never able to do that again. And there's just no answers right now from them. And I think that's just the most disappointing part is, yeah, lose, but don't be embarrassed. Don't get embarrassed by every single team that comes in to the Bell Center. And when it can be full capacity, hopefully on March 14th, it definitely won't be. It's kind of one of those things that we laughed about, because I don't think people are going to buy tickets to go see this team.
Well, Rick, you mentioned about Brendan Gallagher looking like he lost his best friend. He lost two of his best friends in Philip Danault and Thomas Tatar, and Tatar was on the opposing team against the Devils. And I think the Canadiens underestimated just how important Philip Danault was to this team, and just how important that line with Danault and Gallagher and Tatar were. They played against the other team's top line. Not only were they able to shut down the top line of the other team, they were able to produce offense themselves. And you're right, Rick. I mean, Brendan Gallagher, the thing I've always admired about him is every single shift, it's 100% effort, and you notice him every time he's on the ice, and we didn't notice him against the Devils. He seems like, and when Brendan Gallagher looks like he's packed it in, boy, that's really, really not a good thing, because he's one of the last guys you would ever expect to see doing that. And I think his frustration goes back, right to the start of the season, out of training camp. Cole Caulfield was handed the #1 right wing spot on the first line, and Gallagher was on the third line. And he mentioned before the Devils game, he thinks there's maybe 3 games he's played this season with the same line mates. So he's frustrated, and it's showing.
And my experience is, chemistry is so critical, and having a real good team, close-knit group that's going to go that extra mile, between winning and losing. And it's hard to achieve today, obviously, with the way that the salary cap works. But, they obviously have some big-time problems in their group as far as, everybody wanting to pay the price and everybody on board to make the difference. And that's not a good environment. And I've said it before that they've got their hands full as far as how they're going to start to make some corrections to see if they get the right attitude and the right personnel in place.
It certainly looks like a team that stopped playing for their coach. And it's not the first time that's ever happened in the NHL or any pro sport. And it's starting to look pretty obvious that that's the case. And as I've mentioned in previous shows, if they want to bring in an interim coach, it would make sense to me to bring Luke Richardson in. As I mentioned also, that opens up another language controversy that Jeff Molson might want to avoid. But I just don't see how they can continue to allow this team to be embarrassed the way they were the Devils. As you said, the Devils came in, they had lost 7 in a row. They were horrible. And they come in and they look like they look like a Stanley Cup champion team playing against the Canadiens.
And PK Subban didn't get a point at all. And we'll get to PK, actually, because that's what we do when he's in town in Montreal. We find a way to make it about PK Subban. What did you think of his return to the Bell Center? And do you think the Canadiens should actually try to re-sign him and bring him back next year? I know a lot of people started talking about that when he started speaking about his future at his most recent media availability.
Well, for me, PK always is good at telling people what they want to hear, and not taking anything away from them. He's going to turn 33 in May. I'm not sure if he's the type of personality that you like to bring in to your organization, especially when you're looking at trying to rebuild through youth, getting younger, getting faster. He has slowed down a little bit. And I'm not really sure if he's the right recipe to bring in at this point of his career and at this time for the Montreal Canadiens organization.
I don't think it would be horrible to bring him back. They need a veteran defenseman, and he's one of them. And I think the thing too, that if I'm Jeff Molson and I'm having trouble selling tickets to Montreal Canadiens games, and next year, who knows what the season's going to hold, a guy like PK Subban, he sells tickets. People want to come and see him. He adds that entertainment factor that you need in sports, and hockey's always behind that whole part of it when it comes to, athletes being, talking out of turn or saying something that's not the cliche thing. So, I wouldn't say it would be a bad thing if PK Subban came back to the Montreal Canadiens, and the fact that now the general manager is Kent Hughes. It's no longer Marc Bergevin, the guy that traded him away. So, it's not his decision. And so if he wants to bring him back, I think it would be an easier situation than if Bergevin was still the GM.
No, as a media person, it'd be great to have PK back just because he's so good in interviews. I mean, the Tuesday morning, he did a 20-minute Zoom conference and answered all kinds of questions thoughtfully, intelligently. He's one of the smartest athletes I've met. His personality obviously rubs some people the wrong way, but he's not, especially in the hockey world, but he's not the player he was, obviously younger when he was with the Canadiens. But Jack Todd had a good tweet after the game saying the most noticeable thing about PK in that game was that he wasn't noticeable. And that's not necessarily a bad thing as a defenseman in the NHL. He was +2, solid in his own.
Took a penalty.
Yeah, but he, Rick would know this. If you're a defenseman and you're a defensive type defenseman, which PK is more of now, and you're not noticed, that's a good thing. Jeff Petrie was pretty noticeable in that game when he went -4. So it's for PK, he mentioned in that Zoom conference that, he wouldn't rule out coming back to the Canadiens. Anything's possible. He talked about how much he loves Montreal, how much he loves the city. But among the people he rubbed wrong here were Marc Bergevin, who's gone. And also, I think Jeff Molson, that Montreal Children's Hospital thing that PK did on his own without going through the Canadiens Children's Foundation, I don't think sat well in the upper, the offices of the Canadiens. So I'd be very surprised if they brought him back. But from a PR standpoint, it would be good. I mean, you go to the Canadiens games at the Bell Center, Julian, you probably noticed this. You see as many Subban shirts there as you see. Now you're seeing more Suzuki's and Caulfields, but there's still an awful lot of PK Subban shirts you see at the Bell Center for games even now.
Oh, yeah.
But I was just going to say, Stu, he's not the player that he was 4 years ago.
No.
If you're looking at an entertaining type of player, he was. He brought people out of their seats. And it's normal with age. He's come to adjust his game down to allow him to play within his limitations. And that seems to be steady, moving the puck, nothing flashy. And, it's allowed him to contribute in a positive way with New Jersey. But I just don't feel that he would be the type of character at this time to step in as a veteran defenseman that you would want to have around to teach some of your younger guys.
I wonder about that, like with Subban, right? Like at the point that he's at in his career, you mentioned he's going to be 33 years old. I wonder if at his stage of his career, if he'd much rather be on a cup contending team as opposed to being on a rebuilding team like the Montreal Canadiens, as much as he does have a soft spot for the city that drafted him into the National Hockey League. I also think that if it gets to a point where, remember, this is a guy who's coming off that massive contract he's going to sign, and I'm sure teams are going to maybe be interested in him, but I wonder with how tight the salary cap is, and depending on what he might ask, I wonder, I don't have any like info or intel or anything. I'm just wondering who's going to want him and at what money. If it gets to a point where like teams are only going to offer him like a PTO, what if he just says, you know what, I'm just going to take these broadcasting checks from ESPN and Sportsnet as opposed to, trying to see if I can hang around on a roster. I don't think it's too far-fetched considering how much his game has fallen down. I still think if he were to come to Montreal, it'd be an easy PR move. He knows a thing or two about playing in the market. The Canadiens do not need him to be a top pairing defenseman. He can be a bottom pairing guy. And I think there's some value in him teaching some of those younger guys how to, just play in the National Hockey League. And from what I've heard as well in Nashville and in New Jersey, a lot of those younger players did kind of gravitate towards him as a personality. So he could, in some ways, be a good fit as well for the Canadiens if that's what they want, if that's what he wants as well. There are so many factors to consider with a player like Subban.
Julian, he's going to end up somewhere. I mean, he's not going to be a $9 million player anymore. He's going to be
a
$2 or $3 million player, but there would be teams that want him. He's still effective. He can still play in the NHL. He can still log a lot of minutes. He played 19 minutes against the Canadiens. But you bring up an interesting thing about the younger players, and PK spoke about this, about the new, as a mentor role that he's sort of in now with New Jersey, which is something new to him. The older generation of hockey players, PK rubbed them the wrong way, that old school hockey. But the younger generation of players who grew up watching PK probably thought he was pretty cool and liked him. We're seeing more personality now from these younger players like Zegers, we saw at the All-Star game. And after PK played his
Jack Hughes.
After PK played his 800th game in Ottawa, he posted a picture. Shockingly, he posted a picture on Twitter, but he posted a picture of all his teammates around him on the plane with the puck. And he said how cool that was to him to have these guys around him and how happy they were for him that he had played 800 games. So times change, people change. And PK right now, I could see him in a role as a leadership role on another team moving forward. He said also that, he still wants to win a Stanley Cup. He hasn't won one. So I think he's more likely to go to a team that has a chance to win a Stanley Cup than he would elsewhere. But he still has a real soft spot for Montreal, and he spoke about that. And he loves Montreal. He has a lot of good friends here. He still has friends here. He enjoyed playing here. He loved the spotlight here. So many players who don't want to be here, and he was the opposite. So as he said, he wouldn't rule out coming back here, and that doesn't surprise me, but it would surprise me if Jeff Molson agreed to bring him back.
But he also he made that interview stating that, I want to have fun in playing the game, and everywhere that I go, I have fun playing. And tied in with that is winning, and winning is fun, as he said. And I don't foresee that the Montreal Canadiens are going to be winning that much more in the next couple of years that's going to, make him say, hey, listen, I would like to be part of this, versus if I have the opportunity, I'm going to take advantage of a team and a city with the opportunity to maybe win a Stanley Cup, which obviously is the ultimate goal for any professional athlete.
Yeah, Rick has a good point. I don't know how much more fun it'll be seeing Subban play 6-1 games as losses for the Canadiens.
But since he left, who was the last Canadiens player who could bring fans out of their seats? Ilya Kovalchuk for a short period. I mean, PK's not that player again, but it just shows you why. One of the reasons why some Montreal fans still love PK so much, because he was exciting. And that's something that's been missing from this Canadiens team for a long time.
Last weekend, the NHL All-Star Game took place in Las Vegas. A lot of fun was had. The skills competition, the game on the Saturday afternoon. I don't know why you would book an All-Star Game at noon in Las Vegas, but that is, I guess, a complaint for another show. Nick Suzuki was the lone Canadiens representative at the All-Star Game. I'm not going to lie, I wasn't really looking for Nick Suzuki. So I'd like to know your takeaways from Nick Suzuki at the All-Star Game, but if I'm totally cool if you don't have any takeaways, or if you want to talk more generally about the All-Star Game or the All-Star Weekend, or if it's not for you, like, I don't know, I guess grumble about how the All-Star Game isn't for you, I guess.
Well, I thought it was good Nick Suzuki got to have that experience, got to meet Patrice Bergeron. They had that nice video of them chatting. I thought it was kind of cool that if obviously Vegas, you want to do something different, that they had that target shooting competition in the fountain at the Bellagio. And anyone who's been to Vegas knows, you got to stop and see the Bellagio fountain go off. But I thought it was kind of disappointing. Like, I thought it wasn't going to be, like, I thought it was going to be floating. So it wasn't, like, leveled. So you had to kind of, like, balance your weight while doing the target shooting. I thought the water was going to be splashing in their face, that they would have, like, the goggles on during it to just make it a little bit more difficult. Like, something you would see on, like, the Ellen show, when she makes her contestants do this crazy stuff to win a prize. I found it was a little bit disappointing for this one element that was kind of like out of the box and supposed to try and attract people who aren't necessarily hockey fans. So that's what my takeaway is from All-Star Weekend.
You want a sort of an American Ninja version of
yeah, or like Wipeout or something.
Yeah.
Stu, what did you think of the All-Star Weekend?
Well, over the years, I've learned not to watch the All-Star Game because it's basically a waste of time. And the skills competition, I watch the highlights on the news, the sports news later at night, rather than sitting through that 3 hours of nonsense. But, that move by Zegras was amazing. And the skills, whatever they called that competition, I'm not even sure. And, Suzuki, I guess a highlight for him, obviously, was meeting Patrick Bergeron, one of his idols. You asked about the noon hour start. It might have been a selling point to get players to go so they could go to the casino or go out for dinner by 5 in the afternoon instead of being stuck playing the All-Star Game at night. But the All-Star Game is what it is. It's a schmooze fest for NHL sponsors and get players together. And they say young kids like it. Maybe they do. But to me, it's I've said before. To me, it would make sense to combine make the Winter Classic the All-Star Game, make it a little bit different. But that would Gary Bettman doesn't want to have those two combined. He'd rather have two separate events, right? So that's not going to happen. But for me, the All-Star Game it is what it is, as the players like to say.
Yeah, I'm happy for Nick Suzuki. He had a chance to experience that whole event, get to, like Jessica said, be with his guy that he always admired in Bergeron. But listen, it's not that much entertainment in my books. I don't know, choose your poison, so to speak, because remember back in the day when they used to have those games that were 25 for the winner to 20 for the loser in the games that they played. So I don't know. It was good to see Nick there, but as far as the overall entertainment value, I don't know. I'm not big on it.
No, I always feel sorry for the goalies who have to go. They're just getting bombarded. And you could tell in that shootout drill or whatever, like they were told, don't stop the puck. Like imagine if Zegras went in and made that move and the goalie saved it. Like, I'm sure he knew what was coming. And it's like reality TV, scripted reality TV, right? The goalie wasn't going to make a save on that play. So I feel sorry for goalies. You go there and you have to let the guy score on skills competition, and then you just get bombarded in the 3-on-3 game. If I was a GM of a team, I'd really have second thoughts. I'd try and tell my goalie not to go, even if you have to sit the 1-game penalty afterwards because you worry about a groin pull or whatever it might be when you're getting bombarded like that. But again, the All-Star game, thankfully it's over.
Jeez, it's a ringing endorsement of the midseason classic here in the National Hockey League. I'll just go to question 4 to wrap up the show. We have to talk about the Canadiens, obviously, because that's what we're supposed to do. The goaltending has been a sore spot for them. We know about the injuries that have been loaded up with this team at that position. I'll say this about that game against New Jersey. They didn't have to pull the goalie at all at any point. Cayden Primeau was there for all 7 goals allowed. Should the Canadiens try to find another goalie in place of Cayden Primeau? Are they even allowed to? I think they have 48 contracts out of a possible 50. I'm curious for your thoughts on this.
Yeah, they have to do something, I think, at this point, because I was all for Cayden Primeau getting to play and seeing what he could do. And as I've said, it's like a preseason or a training camp for next year. But it's obvious now that he's not ready to play in the NHL. He's just not. And if he was playing well and they were losing 6-2 and he was making a lot of great saves, you'd say keep him here. But I mean, he looks like a deer in the headlights. He's not ready to be in the NHL. He's looking like a guy who was a 7th-round draft pick, which he was. So yeah, it's they might need to make some roster moves to bring in someone, but I think they need to bring in Sam Montembeault. You can put him in there. He's not the future of the Canadiens goaltending, and don't worry so much if he gets shelled. But Pierre LeBrun brought up an interesting name. He brought up Anton Kubotin, who was cleared waivers already once with Dallas this year and used to be Kent Hughes' client. So there's a guy who might be, bring him in here and have him finish out, or at least get them to when Jake Allen's ready to return. But I don't think, Cayden Primeau, you can't just let him in. You got to send him back to Laval. The kid's confidence is going to be shot. And it looks like he needs another year or 2 at least in Laval before he's ready to come back and play in the NHL.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to, put Primeau in that situation. He's obviously not ready. I think what's happening here now, they're just delaying his development by having him, thrown to the wolves, so to speak, at the NHL level. He needs to go and play in Laval. He needs to go and gain experience and get his game where it should be, because it's obviously really, really tough on him to play at this level at this point of his career. So, they should try, and easier said than done, find somebody else out there that they can maybe bring in and, let Primeau go and develop all of his skills at the American League level, so that they don't ruin him and completely destroy his confidence, which very well could be destroyed after what he's been dealing with up to date. So I hope that something happens to, patch up that area to allow some of these kids to play where they should be playing, and it's not at the NHL.
They could just put the dummy that they sometimes use at practice when goalies take the therapy day. At this point, nothing.
You won't take up a roster spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the shooter doesn't slide out of the net either.
Yeah, that too.
But yeah, you can't keep Cayden Primeau there. It's definitely going to hurt his development. It's going to hurt his confidence. And I think moving forward, they have to find a goaltender. I think even if you think towards next season, that you want to say Carey Price is going to be healthy and be there, and they'll have the tandem of Jake Allen and Carey Price, what everyone was hoping for, but there's no guarantee. And then you don't want to be in a situation like this again next season with Carey Price not ready, hoping that Jake Allen stays healthy, and not really having a solid backup goaltender. So I think it's not necessarily they have to look for a short-term fix. They have to look more for a longer-term fix in case they're in a situation like this again next season.
I agree with you, Jess, because Primeau's been considered the goalie of the future for the Canadiens. And boy, that was Marc Bergevin's belief, but Kent Hughes must be going, I don't know about that. So, if Carey Price can't come back, and, when he spoke with the media, he said that's quite possible he might not be able to play again. I mean, he's back on the ice skating. He's still not taking any shots. He doesn't look anywhere close to returning. So moving forward, that's another thing Kent Hughes has got to figure out. Is Cayden Primeau really the goalie of the future? At this point, it doesn't look like that. And if that's what Kent Hughes believes, he's got to be looking out to try and find another goalie who could be the goalie of the future once Carey Price is finished.
But Rick, I want to throw this to you here with the fact that I understand that Cayden Primeau has not had some great performances, but considering how bad this team is, how much does that go into the overall assessment of his play? I mean, fine, you can say he doesn't look ready, but the team in front of him isn't ready either. How much of that can you really put on Cayden?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, the group that they have in front of them and the amount of good primetime scoring chances that they're giving up. I mean, Carey Price would have a hard time making some of the saves with what they're, giving to the opposition. And if you look down at the number of breakdowns that they have, whether it's on the rush or in the defensive zone, I don't know how many times you can see point blank scoring opportunities coming from the slot area or in tight around the net, and nobody's around. And I don't understand. And again, my old mindset was, when in doubt, just stay in front of the net because something's going to happen there. And I see so many times vacancies in front of the net where there's nobody around, and the goalie's left one-on-one with a guy to make the save over and over again, too often. And I don't care how good you are. And obviously, with a young goalie, this is very, very challenging because every night he's getting bombarded with some point-blank good scoring chances by good goal scorers. And it's not going to help when you have some of the bonehead type of moves that their whole group is doing, defensively. And, it doesn't help his situation and development of, I don't care who the goalie is.
And then Thursday night, we got the Capitals and Alex Ovechkin coming into town. I mean, also he might score 7 goals himself. The way that
I can't wait to watch OV on Thursday, just because I like the player. But you are absolutely right; it's very possible he might score like a lot of goals
in the first period alone.
Oh God, this might be the best thing for him to get back up on the chase to eventually eclipse Wayne Gretzky's goal scoring record. I think that's literally the selling point for Thursday's game. If you are one of the 500 fans lucky enough, if you're one of the 500 fans lucky enough to be at the Bell Center on Thursday, don't think of it as you watching the Montreal Canadiens lose a game. Think of it as you could watch history. Literally, you could literally watch history. The last thing I'll say, Anton Khudobin, I believe on the second year of a 3-year deal with a cap hit of $3.3 million. He was placed on waivers at one point this year. People forget, but when the Dallas Stars were in the Stanley Cup and Corey Perry was on that team against the Tampa Bay Lightning, Anton Khudobin was on the run of his life, almost Halak-esque in the fact that he was kind of taking over. He was the backup for the team, but he took over as the starter and helped the Dallas Stars into the Stanley Cup final. Definitely not a world beater in net. But if the Canadiens found a way to get a guy like him in their stead, I mean, they'd have to find a way to fit him under the cap, obviously, and there's some troubles there. But you could have worse options. Kevin Poulin is also in the AHL right now. Is it worth signing him to an NHL deal? The Canadiens need somebody to platoon with Samuel Montembeault as Jake Allen is trying to heal up, and who knows what will come with Carey Price. That's still the $10.5 million question when it comes to his health. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Well, there's going to be changes because, I mean, they've had 16 forwards at practice this week and only 6 defensemen. So they need to get rid of some forwards. They need to add some defensemen and add a goalie if they can also. So I think there's going to be changes coming out of necessity as much as anything else.
All right. That'll do it for this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. Jess, Stu, Rick, thank you very much as always. And you watching on YouTube, thank you very much. Thank you very much as always. Subscribe to the show if you haven't already done so. Subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out newsletter. You can go to montrealgazette.com/newsletters to do that. And of course, visit hockeyinsideout.com for more fun stuff like full episodes, articles, and other great content.